Oh, so you're finally awake.
What? Who are you?
Hi, I'm Rad Hazard, 2 times presidential candidate, full-time crackhead. Nice to meet you.
Huh. So, what are you doing here?
Well, I couldn't stop yapping about the cinematic mod and the Build 2046 mod and the ferns and the trees, so they threw me in here. Why are you here, though?
I eat people.
I see. Do you want to hear about this mod called Der Schwarze Nebel?
No?
Der Schwarze Nebel, or the Black Fog, is what Build 2046 became. So, in 2015, the last Build 2046 release came out, and I can only assume it wasn't met with much positive feedback. D-Team, the team behind this project, rebranded themselves as the Nerven Halle team, and their mod, Build 2046, became Der Schwarze Nebel. Now, before I go any further, let's recap a little. In part 1, where I talked about the cinematic mod, I concluded that while the mod definitely had some interesting ideas, its faults and problems simply outweighed any potential it had to become a fan favorite for most people. In part 2, I talked about the Build 2046 mod, where I concluded that the mod just simply had faulty foundations. Each release had abrupt and critical changes made to them that by the end, it became an amalgamation of questionable gameplay changes and mediocre map updates in some parts. After that video went live, I received comments and emails again from the people that actually worked on this mod, and I learned a few things. Vlad, the lead developer behind Build 2046, was just 13 when he started that project. While it's ambitious of a 13-year-old to do that, his age is definitely shown in the mod itself. Vlad's career as a team lead over the years hasn't been without issues. All mappers and modders that worked on the mods all say that they had to wrestle with Vlad over the changes and what to implement and what to cut out. While most of the team were dedicated Half-Life fans that wanted nothing more than to produce a proper cinematic-styled beta mod, Vlad's questionable leadership caused most of the mod to look like what it is in the end. There's something I forgot to mention in the previous video, and also something that I learned after I made it. One of the Borealis maps, straight up stolen from missing information. The Odell model, also stolen from missing information. And there were questionable posters of Alex without clothing plastered on the walls in a few maps. Yeah. Now, I don't usually delve into the past histories of people that make these games and mods, but this case is an exception because it directly relates to the Build 2046 mod, and the mod we'll be talking about today. Vlad has also acted out in his time online, posting strange things and saying strange things, to say it mildly, but that stuff is sensitive, and I don't want to say it out loud in this video, so in summary, the dude behind these mods was quite the character. Now then, Der Schwarze Nebel. I actually found 2 builds of this mod, DSN 1.0 and DSN 1.83. One of the modders that I was talking to did say that they can share some more stuff from a later build they had lying around, but honestly, given how many builds we played of Build 2046, I think I'll just run with 2 this time. This time around, I don't really want to get into the specifics of it, the nitty-gritty. I feel like the last 2 videos have already been quite critical of the mods I talked about, so I want this video to be more easygoing, a little relaxing, and not as a deep dive as before. So, starting off, DSN 1.0 removes any and all extra useless maps that the previous mod has. Like, there's no Icky Pop or Palace and Vertigo maps appearing back to back. This time around, it actually tried to build a proper storyline all the way to the Street Wars chapter. As usual, it all starts with the E3 maps. We've got this new purplish tint going on, which will now become a staple of the mod going forward. Before, it messed around with this feature or straight up removed it, but I do feel this tone mapping adds a bit of personality to the mod. The Quarrytown map, or Ravenholm, now uses a late 2002 variant, and it looks decent. In this version, you'll see what Build mod tried to do in 4.93. Consistent visuals, gameplay balancing, somewhat professional looking map updates, but this time it takes it up a notch as it further dives deep into its cinematic mod inspiration. Last time the issue was that the updates to the maps felt very out of order, as some places were left barren like they were in the leaked files, and some places were heavily updated like the cinematic mod. But DSN 1.0 starts off on a very good note regarding the visuals. You start to see major updates or changes to the mod that genuinely feel good. Next chapter is the intro. I feel like they tried to do something original here. There were many different drafts of how Half-Life 2 would start, some by boat, some by train, some by Gordon in a dreamlike state. Here I think they went with the dreamlike state where Gordon is in stasis, like this whole forestry world is the stasis realm or something like that, because at the end we see G-Man who looks like something. Then it tries to do that original game opening where G-Man gives Gordon a speech about how things have changed and how the world has changed and stuff like that, and the map behind him changes to be all withered and destroyed. Now I'm gonna be honest, the story draft that Mark Laidlaw wrote was actually pretty badass, and I don't think it was even possible to recreate it like this, but I guess this will do. Then of course, we end up on a train. City 17. Undertaker Manwich. And hey, cinematic atmospheric map design. I like this. This is one of those things that I wouldn't tell any of my friends that I enjoy, but I'll enjoy it in secrecy. There's dozens of flaws to talk about, but I'm just gonna enjoy the overtly dense nature of this map. I really like this new skybox they're using, almost feels like a depressing and evil sky that you would see in your nightmares. Fits this kind of aesthetics that they're going for. Things like these small areas or small pockets of areas that you can see from afar but not go there are also nice ways to show that the city is more than just square and rectangle buildings. In Fabrication Street, we again see new buildings and no child labor. Sad. This building with the orange lit rooms looks nice against the bluish overall tone of the map. I don't know if it was an artistic choice, but this orange and blue color works really well because they're both complementary colors. Orange pops more when used on top of blue. Going into the Manhack arcade, I witnessed one of the most well-polished and self-reflective floor in the universe. If I was there, I would lie down and lick the floor to taste its smoothness. Outside the arcade, I appreciate the mod now using more custom American-styled buildings instead of reusing retail building models. However, this specific building always catches my eye as it seems more European than American. You know, it feels like one of these places. And who even is this dude? Is this Vlad? In Kleiner's lab is where I finally had understood that this mod somewhat achieved its original goal of making the beta more cinematic. I appreciate Kleiner and Alex looking like their original models while Alex being just a bit different. Barney, however, now uses the Cinematic Mod 13 model. However, it was the lab itself that fascinated me. This time around, there weren't any protruding objects or 3D models sticking out like a sore thumb, but rather, all of the updates blended together with the original map quite nicely. Moving on, I was still disappointed to see that this area was still here, you know, with Boxcar Joe and his secret Vortigaunt lover. While I appreciate the new visuals here, inside the sewers it still felt off. The layout, how the map progresses, all of it seemed sluggish even with some improvements they tried to do. Also, the room with the 20 billion manhacks is still here. God damn it. Oh man, this scene right here, I think this is one of the more major highlights of the mod. Standing outside the city walls, you can see the old city, a cut element from the beta, actually there, in ruins. A new change was made in the canals map that I liked. These wooden platforms, they add in this new level of movement within the map where you're not confined to the ground level but actually can proceed on higher ground as well. But unfortunately, it wasn't used as effectively as I thought because most of the higher ground didn't have any enemies or supplies and not much to do. The canals themselves though played pretty well. They did remove that annoying sniper and the path blocking 3D models of wooden logs, but this stupid helicopter is still here. Next is the Wasteland chapter. That's pretty boring, to be honest. I mean, the concept is very interesting, having the player go through the wasteland, but the repeating textures, the similar landscape, and not much else makes it pretty apparent why this concept was cut or at least reduced a lot in the retail game. And oh boy, it's Ravenholm again, and it uses the E3 map opening now. I was quite disappointed with this because the earlier version wasn't half bad. It actually looked pretty good. So a lot of the Ravenholm chapter is now trimmed down. However, rather than the graveyard section, it has this section where you go through an actual quarry. Now at first I thought this was all original, but after a while I realized that this is a beta map from like 2001 or 2002. But I will give props to the mod for making it look a little more cinematic, I guess. This map here is also from the beta and is called Demo Quarry or something like that. It was being made to be showcased as a demo, probably at E3 2002, but of course that did not happen. It has 2 hunters in it and absolutely no ammo supply, so good luck trying to kill them like this. Next was a new chapter, at least for the mod it was new, the Antline Caves, and it's literally the episode 2 map just retextured to look a little different. Now, I want to go off on a tangent and address some feedback. In the last video, a few people said that my criticism of the mod didn't make much sense. While I agree that the language barrier disallows me to properly share my thoughts in these videos, I want to explain again why I was upset at a lot of the maps. The core issue of reusing beta maps isn't that a mod is using beta maps, it's the fact that the mod didn't really do anything with them. Just texture changes alone don't suffice when you're advertising a project as a beta but cinematic mod. But looking at this is almost a comeback arc for the project. It genuinely feels like the mod now has its own image, even though it's still riddled with some of the problems I talked about previously. I would go into detail, but I feel like I've talked about the same thing again and again and again, many times to the point where I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time, including my own. As I said earlier, I'll quickly go through both builds of DSN and wrap up this series nice and tight. Now, Air Exchange makes a very nice update with these new buildings in the back and this dam-like structure here. Before, there were buildings back there, but they were residential apartments. These look like office buildings, which somewhat suits the theme of this chapter. I was surprised to see that the insides had a few updates too, but nothing too drastic, I guess. However, this open area was still as tedious as before. For a totally new player, I feel like going through the old Air Exchange maps would be so confusing. I partly know what to do because I'd been through these maps many times before, but how would a new player be able to navigate around these confusing layouts? In summary, Der Schwarze Nebel 1.0 was again a high point in this whole story. The last build 2046 build we played was kinda disappointing, to be honest. The build before that, 4.93, had so much going for it, but it was all removed in the final one. Now all of it is back in DSN 1.0 and even with more improvements. In this state, I'd say this mod is actually pretty entertaining. Looking aside some irritating design choices, version 1.0 of Der Schwarze Nebel definitely solidified what Vlad wanted to do all those years ago. But then I played version 1.83. Now, I started the mod and this popped up. A message from Vlad basically saying that he never wanted to make a beta recreation mod or be restricted by the lore of the beta or the games, but he only wanted to make a mod that updates the beta world like Cinematic Mod updated Half-Life 2's world. Also, there are some things that he said here that contradicts himself, so yeah. If you have to place a message this long at the beginning of your mod, you really need to take a good and hard look at the whole picture because something is definitely wrong. Right off the bat, the overtly intense HDR bloom is back. Time to permanently damage my eyes again. Now, the same thing happens that happened at the end of the 2046 video I made. We played a version that was pretty good and then in the next version it shot itself in the foot many times. Here, while the degradation is not as bad, it still feels like a downgrade from the version we just played. A major reason is the lighting changes made along with the skyboxes being different than before. Before it was all dark and gritty and now it's all bright and pretty. Then there's some really weird parts in the maps themselves that I'll summarize in a bit. Alright, City 17. Thankfully this remained almost the same, but now have some new buildings in the train station area. And what the hell is wrong with these two? Just look at them. And why did they revert back to the old textures? Version 1's train station actually looked pretty good for what it was. This monotonous silver grey style is just ugly. Much of the terminal area remains the same, the good changes they made are still here thankfully, and the same goes for Fabrication Street. I liked this over-the-top, balls-to-the-walls atmosphere the mod has in these City 17 maps. No arcade though, the Manhack arcade was completely ripped out. Instead we go to Kleiner's lab with Shiny Alex. In the root canal chapter, there's this stupid grenade tossing puzzle that just didn't work and honestly doesn't make any sense. The rest of it was pretty much the same. And right after that, there's a puzzle where you have to put 2 batteries on these 2 plates. One battery is right here, the other is locked. So naturally, you put one of the batteries to get the second battery, then use both of them to open the gate. But guess what? Once you put down one of the batteries on the trigger, you can't pick it up again. So after I got the second one, I couldn't pick up the first one again. What is this? Air Exchange was superbly overhauled though. The starting area looked and felt fantastic. It really emphasized on the whole scale of this giant facility. I kinda like this new skybox too, but I honestly would rather much prefer the dark and dirty clouds than a clear sky, especially in the air exchange maps. Now, onto the Borealis map. What a nice looking place. I sure hope nothing goes wrong. This room has a bunch of posters of semi-nude women in it. Yeah. Now I was actually kind of burnt out from making an almost 1 hour long video on build 2046. I didn't want to do it again for this mod. If I had done the same, this video would have been very repetitive and annoying even. That's why I wanted to make it short and summarized quickly for both of the builds I played. I'd very much like this series to conclude quickly so I can move on to other stuff I want to make. But as an epilogue, I want to say this. After learning of Vlad's behaviors behind the scenes and his destructive nature and everything else like the stolen maps from missing information, it was a given that these two projects would have turned out like they did. Oddly enough, Vlad's inability to adapt his project to the feedback he's receiving reminds me a lot of how Jurgen was, the dude who made the cinematic mod. One major lesson that can be taken from both Jurgen and Vlad is that feedback is very important. Whether you're making a game or a mod, if a substantial number of people are saying that a part of your project is faulty, then it is faulty and you need to fix it. Rather than making what you would enjoy, you should make what everyone can enjoy. However, version 1.0 of Der Schwarze Nebel is, I think, the best out of all of this. It has a decent atmosphere, the maps are actually pretty good, and it doesn't have that extra nonsense that the previous versions did. So finally, we did get to see a cinematic beta mod that we've been searching for all this time. But unfortunately, Der Schwarze Nebel would die off around 2017-2018 and Vlad would move on to other projects before leaving source modding entirely. And much to my disappointment, the project didn't go out with a bang, but rather with a whimper. So what do you think?
Can you shut up already?
What's your favorite bit of this story? Was it the oily Barney?
Can you shut up?
Thanks so much for watching, and a big thanks to these benefactors for supporting the channel. HPR, Hopcobbies, Unusual, Wolflow, Scooms, Aoi, Nicholas Go, Imperial Embers, T-Boy301, Tombstone, Jack5282, Taiwanesium, Quiltman, 501st Clone Boy, Interloper CS, TTG, Robocop Noel, Franco Senlehi, Justin Imbergriff, Tedesor, Otakan Nachos, Lamdre, Roadkill, Walter, NoClick, Geout, Fisher Grice, Hawkassault, Mistress Paban, Jelen, A Normal Street Lamp, TRR Droid, and Bipolet. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.